Hello, welcome. How do I come in? Can you see me? Can you hear me? I see some people already in the chat. All right. Okay, so welcome. Let's see. Ella, Gita, Jens, the other Gita and Gita squared, Melinda, Jessica, Tiago, Gleam Tech, Melinda. And that actually might cover everybody. So Monk Chat looks a little different, doesn't it? it's lone Monk Chat live from the dungeons below Empty Cloud Monastery. The deep depths of Empty Cloud Monastery. Denise, welcome. All right, or Dennis, is that? So, obviously, it's just me. I think I told, if you guys were here for the live stream this morning, I mentioned that they are having an event. There's a DJ outside. There's music. You probably won't be able to hear it because I have my mic specifically set to go like this. But they have all kinds of activities, maybe 50, 60 people, and DJ, all kinds of events that they're going on. So they're being active as the people who created this organization to be up there with the people. And they told me this morning, best that you do it downstairs because of all the noise and things like that. So here we are downstairs. But other than that, it's Monk Chat. So any questions about Buddhism, meditation, monasticism, any topics you'd like me to talk about or discuss, that's a good thing. So let's talk. One of the things that I often like to do in my own sessions that I do, various different sessions, is I like to have a discussion. So I'm more than willing to actually have a back and forth with you guys about various Buddhist topics. So we'll see how it goes. Let's see where the evening takes us and how far we go with it. Still seeing everybody. Welcome, Kevin, Reed, Jen, Zella. Route 14. Jens, I will inform Bante and Aya about your deep gratitude about the teachings they've been given over the past weeks. So nothing yet, huh? That might be because Gabriella's not here. If Gabriella was here, there'd be 5 questions by now. I just want to flow. Hello, Jason. Gleam Tech going straight to the hard questions right off the bat. What exactly is the Cheetah, and how does it relate to the 5 aggregates? So in the early texts, in the Nikayas, the Buddha essentially has 3 words that constitute mind. Chitta, mano, vijnana. Chitta is described and is defined as the affective aspect of the mind. So the emotional, affective aspect of the mind. This is often why you see, like in the Thai forest, when you see like release of the heart, or like any kind of translation of the English that says heart, the Pali word is almost always chitta, right? So this is the affective, the emotional aspect of the mind. Mano is the intellectual, rational aspect of the mind, and vijnana is consciousness, right? So these 3 things in the early texts are what essentially constitute mind. Chitta, mano, vijnana. These 3, which essentially are, at least the first 2 are aspects of mind, right? You have this kind of emotional aspect, and you have the rational aspect. And let's see, how does it relate to the 5 aggregates? So form, feeling, perception, mental formations, however you want. Bhante Sudaso has described sankharas many times in the past week or so, mental formations and consciousness, right? So right off the bat, one of the aspects of mind, consciousness, is part of that, right? And so we also have, right, perception, thoughts / intentions / mental formations, right? This is all connected to mind, right? So you have the 5 aggregates. The first one is form, and all of the rest of Vedana is it's connected to form in a way, but it's also mental. But the rest are essentially all mind, right? So within this 3-way distinction of mind, you can find the rest of the aggregates. Hello, Adriana, Ethan. Melinda, can you discuss absolute reality as it relates to Buddhism? See, this is an interesting thing, right? Because in the early text, the Buddha doesn't really talk a lot about absolute reality, right? Most of his focus and most of his teachings focus on what the Buddha called the all, right? What is the world, right? The all is this mind and this body, these 6 senses. This is the world, right? So most of what the Buddha is talking about, even when he talks about like the elements, the 4 elements, right? It's almost always in relation to this mind and body. Buddha doesn't really necessarily give a lot of answers to like, what is the absolute reality of the world, right? He's asked these questions, right? Is the universe finite, infinite, all these kind of questions, but he doesn't answer them. And one of the main reasons is because it's not conducive to abandoning of dukkha. It's not conducive to awakening, right? So even when you do see the Buddha talk about things like the world, there's this wonderful sutta, it's called Darkness. And in it, the Buddha talks about what I initially thought to be kind of like, it sounded like it was a black hole, right? He says there is this intercosmic darkness where neither sun nor moon, no light from any planets or stars shines. And the bhikkhus are like, oh, wonderful, Bhante. It's such an amazing place that this is so dark. And then the Buddha says, but there is something even darker. And the monastics are like, oh, what Bhante can be even darker than this? And he says, greed, hatred, and delusion in the mind, right? So even when the Buddha goes out into the universe, he brings it back to this, right? He's using the outside, per se, as a comparison, like to kind of grab you. But really what he's pointing to is what's going on in this mind, in this body, this psychophysical organism, right? So what is the ultimate reality? I mean, Bhante was talking about how everything is essentially mind-made, right, the other day. I mean, I don't know if I would essentially go that far per se, but he also did talk about how the Buddha didn't really go into much detail about these things, right? At the time of the Buddha, there was such a variety of debate and discussion about the nature of all of these things. And you can see that in the suttas, right? Where all the different wandering ascetics talk to the Buddha about all kinds of different things. But his focus was, we're like, what does he say in the one sutta? Both bhikkhus, both formerly and now, all I have taught is dukkha and the cessation of dukkha. So that's his main focus. So we don't know absolute reality. You could even go by science. We could be in a simulation, right? We don't know. All we know is that we have this existence, whatever it is. We have, we perform actions that cause ourselves our own suffering. We can perform actions that skillful actions that cause ourselves to less suffering, right? More contentment and peace, and that is beneficial to yourself and others. So this is what we know. And so this is where the ground of our practice and action is. Bhante was speaking about Samvega. Can you speak on this topic a little bit? Yeah, so all of these words, nibbida, nibbindati, viraga, vimutti, Samvega, what all of these are pointing towards is that as your insight grows, you start to see the world for what it is. And you start to lose the desire to deal with it, right? It's very important to understand that this is not an aversion to the world. This is not a hatred of the world. I've met people, like especially kind of young guys who want to come to the monastery to ordain. And like they're like, oh, I hate the world. I can't stand my parents, my ex-girlfriend, my girlfriend dumped me, all these things. I'm like, I'm not old enough as a monk to ordain anybody, but if I was old enough, like somebody came to me like, I'm not ordaining you. Sorry, like this is not the reality, right? What happened to use my own example of my own practice, right? By the time I left the world to become a monk, I was making good money. I had the best social life I had ever had. I had the most friends, the most female attention, everything was pretty good in my regular life. Other than wishing for to be a millionaire, like the average person, that's what they want. They want to, just to be able to make enough money to live well and, have family and support yourself and live a good life and have good social friends and all that kind of stuff. Right. But the practice had awakened in me an understanding that even with all that, it just wasn't good enough, right? The Buddha was pointing towards something more worthwhile, more meaningful, more peaceful, right? And that was my path. That was like, this is what I want to follow, right? This is, everything in the world, the lay life is pretty good. It's not bad, all these kind of things, right? So even me, right? Like you can imagine somebody else who has much worse time and luck in life and all kinds of issues and stuff like that. You would think, oh, well, of course they would want to leave the world, right? But you see that a lot. Like a lot of monastics, they'll talk about like, oh, I was a lawyer, I was a businessman, I was Bhante Sujato, I was a rock, I was in a rock band or whatever. Like all of these, like things that you would think that most people want to aspire to, right? But the practice leads you to essentially understand that even with all these pleasant things, even if you had the most maximally pleasant life, there's still dukkha. There's still suffering, right? There's still this kind of, and especially, so this is the other point when we talk about things like Samvega. Without rebirth, it all falls apart, right? If it's YOLO, right? Then who cares? Why would you develop nibbida? Why would you? It's just one life. I'll just do whatever I want to do, and then I die, right? So like if you see like in the Judeo-Christian ethos, right? It's one life. So you'll see like in the Middle Ages and things like that, there was the concept of just suffer through life and you'll get your reward in heaven, right? But in Buddhism, you're like in this concept is, yeah, you can suffer through life and get your reward in heaven, but guess what? That heaven's impermanent, and then you're back to the suffering again, right? You're out of the Deva realms, like Bhante was talking about this morning. You're out of the nice Deva realms, and guess what? You're in the human realm, the animal realm, the hell realm, whatever, and it ain't as pleasant, right? So you understand, like, man, do I really want to do this again? Like, I mean, I think of myself, like, I mean, I had a lot of, I had my struggles in life and my sufferings and my losses and things like that. But even like, like I had a decent childhood. There were issues, but like, I worked child protective services and I realized what some real things like children can grow up in. And I'm like, okay, no matter what was the problem in my life, I had it a lot better than most. So I think about like, I had a decent childhood, a decent growing up. I mean, I hated high school. I would never want to relive high school again. But I realized like, no matter all the stuff that's happened to me, I don't regret my life. It was okay, but I would never want to do it again. So for me, just the small chance that I would be reborn again is like, no, I don't want to do this again, right?